On Facebook, my daughter-in-law calls me the best abuela in the world. In her dining room, in front of her parents, she asked me to stop speaking Spanish to my grandson because it made people uncomfortable. To the world, I was loved. To her, I was the help. She said it with a smile. That is what I remember most, the smile. I was teaching Leo a song. Los pollitos dicen pío, pío, pío. He was 5 years old. He was sitting on my lap, and I was singing to him the way my mother sang to me, the way her mother sang to her. And Jennifer, my son's wife, looked at me across her dining table like I had done something dirty. Her parents were visiting from Connecticut. They were drinking wine. They were talking about their vacation to Italy. And I was singing to my grandson in Spanish, my language, his language. Jennifer put down her fork. She smiled at me, the kind of smile you give a waiter who brought the wrong dish. And she said, "Rosa, could you please not speak Spanish in front of my parents? It makes them uncomfortable." 6 people at that table. The silence had weight. I felt it press down on my chest. I looked at my son Miguel. He was looking at his plate. He did not say a word. Jennifer's mother said, "It's nothing personal, Rosa. It's just easier when we all speak the same language, you know?" I nodded. I said, "I understand." But I did not understand. I understood nothing. I stopped singing. I put Leo down. I went to the kitchen. I washed the dishes I had used to make dinner for all of them, the rice, the beans, the chicken they barely touched. I dried my hands, I folded the towel, and I went home. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. I kept hearing her voice. It makes them uncomfortable. Like my language was a problem, like I was a problem. That night, something inside me finally broke. Let me tell you how it started. Jennifer married my son 3 years ago. She is 32 years old. She works in marketing. She makes good money. She wears nice clothes. Everyone says she is modern, successful, progressive. When Miguel brought her home the first time, I thought, bueno, she is different from us, but if he loves her, I will love her too. Then Leo was born, my first grandson. I held him in the hospital and I cried. I told him in Spanish, "Te quiero mucho, mijo. Tu abuela siempre va a estar aquí." Jennifer was in the bed, tired, and she smiled at me. She said, "Thank you, Rosa. You're going to be such a good grandma." 2 months later, she called me. She said, "Rosa, I'm going back to work. Would you be able to watch Leo? Just 2 days a week." I said yes. Of course I said yes. You're their grandmother. That is what you do. 2 days became 3 days. Then Isabella was born, and 3 days became 4. I rearranged my hospital shifts. I worked weekends so I could have Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays free. I lost overtime pay. I said no to extra hours. But I told myself, this is what family does. I watched them at Jennifer's house. I fed them, I changed them, I played with them. I cleaned the kitchen while they napped. I folded laundry. I sang to them in Spanish. I taught them words, agua, sol, amor. I wanted them to know where they came from. Jennifer never said thank you. Not really. She would come home from work and look around the house like she was inspecting it. She would say, "Oh, Rosa, you didn't have to clean, but thanks." And then she would go upstairs. If I had been anyone else, a nanny, a babysitter, a stranger, she would have paid me $25 an hour, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day. That is $25 an hour, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day. That is $25 an hour, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day. That is $600 a week. That is $2,400 a month. I also bought groceries sometimes, diapers, wipes, snacks. Add another $200 a month. I did this for 18 months. Do the math. $46,800. I gave her $46,000 worth of my time, my body, my love, and I never asked for a dollar. But it was not the money that hurt. It was the way she treated me. She corrected my English in front of the children. I would say something, and she would repeat it back to me the right way, like I was a child too. She made rules. Rosa, please don't give them too much sugar. Rosa, we're trying to do screen-free time. Rosa, can you make sure they nap at exactly 1 o'clock? I followed every rule. I wrote them down in a notebook, and when I spoke Spanish to Leo and Isabella, she would walk into the room and switch to English. She would say, "Leo, tell Grandma what you did at school today, in English, okay?" Like Spanish was something we did in private, something to hide. My son Miguel saw all of this. He said nothing. I told myself, she is stressed. She is working hard. She does not mean it. I told myself, you're their grandmother. You do not complain. But then came that dinner, and I could not tell myself anything anymore. That night, I sat in my kitchen. I did not turn on the lights. I did not turn on the TV. I just sat there in the dark. And I thought about Javier, my husband. He died 5 years ago, but I still hear his voice sometimes. He used to say, "Rosa, you give too much. You think that is love, but sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is fear." I did not understand what he meant back then, but that night I understood. I was afraid that if I said no, Miguel would stop calling. Afraid that if I set boundaries, I would lose my grandchildren. Afraid that Jennifer would decide I was too Mexican, too old, too much, and I would disappear from their lives. So I stayed quiet. I smiled. I said yes. I rearranged my whole life around her schedule, and I told myself it was love. But it was not love. It was fear, wearing love's clothes. I did not sleep that night. I got up at 5 a.m. I made coffee. I sat at the table with my calendar. I keep a paper calendar. I write everything down. Every day I babysat, I marked in blue pen. Every time Jennifer asked me to come just one more day, I marked in red. I counted 18 months, over 200 days. I opened my phone. I scrolled through my text messages with Jennifer. "Rosa, can you come Thursday too? I have a meeting." "Rosa, can you stay late today? Miguel has to work." "Rosa, I know it's your day off, but can you just watch them for a few hours?" I said yes, every time. You're their grandmother. But I also noticed something. In 18 months of messages, she never once asked me how I was. She never asked if I was tired. She never said, "Rosa, take a break. You have done enough." I closed my phone. I finished my coffee, and I made a decision. Was I wrong to stay silent for so long? Maybe if I had said something the first time she corrected my English, it would not have gotten this bad. But when it is your own son's house, your own grandchildren, you stay quiet. You tell yourself, this is what love looks like. Maybe you have done this too. The next Tuesday, I was supposed to babysit. I called Jennifer Monday night. I said, "Jennifer, I need to talk to you." She said, "Sure, Rosa, what's up?" I said, "I cannot babysit anymore." Silence. Then, "What do you mean?" I said, "I mean I need to stop. I have been doing this for 18 months. I need to take care of myself now." She laughed, not a real laugh, a nervous one. She said, "Rosa, you can't just stop. The kids need you. You're their grandmother." I closed my eyes. I took a breath. I said, "I will always be their grandmother, but I will not be your free employee anymore." Her voice changed. It got cold. She said, "Wow, okay, I guess I know where I stand." I said, "Jennifer, I gave you 18 months. I gave you $46,000 worth of my time. I never asked you for anything. I just asked you to respect me, and you could not even do that." She said, "That's not fair. I never disrespected you." I said, "You told me not to speak Spanish in front of your parents. You told me my language made them uncomfortable. In front of my grandchildren. In front of my son. That is not disrespect?" She did not answer right away. Then she said, "That's not what I meant." I said, "Then what did you mean?" She did not have an answer. I said, "I love Leo and Isabella. I will always love them. But I need you to understand something. I am not your maid. I am not your babysitter. I am their grandmother. And if you want me in their lives, you will treat me like I matter." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat down. I put my head in my hands, and I cried. That moment, when she said the kids needed me, I almost gave in. I almost called her back and said, "Okay, Rosa, forget it. Just keep your mouth shut and keep the peace." I came so close. If my daughter Sophia had not been there earlier that week, if she had not looked at me and said, "Mom, you don't have to do this anymore," I do not know. Would you have had the strength? I almost did not. Miguel called me the next day. He was angry. He said, "Mom, what are you doing? Jennifer is stressed out. She's scrambling to find childcare. You can't just abandon them." I said, "Miguel, I did not abandon anyone. I gave her 18 months. I gave her everything." He said, "She didn't ask you to do all that." I said, "Yes, she did. Every single week she asked me." He said, "You could have said no." I said, "I did say no, yesterday, and now you are angry." He did not answer. I said, "Miguel, do you remember what she said to me at dinner? Do you remember what you did?" He said, "She didn't mean it like that." I said, "Then how did she mean it? And why did you say nothing?" He sighed. He said, "Mom, you're being dramatic." Dramatic. Like my feelings were too big. Like I was making a problem out of nothing. I said, "Okay, mijo. If you think I am being dramatic, then I am sorry. But I am not changing my mind." I hung up. I did not hear from him for a week. But I heard from Sophia, my daughter. She called me that same night. She said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." I started crying again. I said, "I think I just lost my son." She said, "No, you didn't, but you might have saved yourself." 2 days later, Sophia called Miguel. She told him everything she had been watching for months, the way Jennifer treated me, the way he said nothing, the way I was breaking my back for his family while he pretended not to see. She said, if Mom was anyone else, if she was white, if she was a professional nanny, would Jennifer talk to her that way? Would she tell her not to speak her own language? Miguel did not have an answer. Sophia said, "You need to talk to your wife, because if you don't, you're going to lose Mom, and you're going to deserve it." I sat in my kitchen that night alone, and I thought, Did I do the right thing? My mother used to say, "You sacrifice for your children, always." But what happens when your sacrifice becomes invisible? When it becomes expected? When your love becomes a service they forget to pay for? I still do not know if I made the right choice. Maybe I will never know. Miguel came to my apartment 3 days later. He did not call first. He just knocked. I opened the door. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking like the little boy who used to come to me when he had done something wrong. He said, "Can I come in?" I let him in. I made him coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had made my decision. He said, "I talked to Jennifer." I did not say anything. He said, "She cried a lot. She said she didn't realize. She didn't know she was making you feel that way." I said, "Miguel, I have been feeling that way for 18 months. He nodded. He looked at his coffee. He said, "I didn't see it, Mom. I should have, but I didn't." I said, "You saw it. You just did not want to say anything. You did not want to choose." He looked up at me. His eyes were red. He said, "You're right." I reached across the table. I put my hand on his. I said, "Mijo, I love you. I love Jennifer. I love those kids more than anything in this world. But I cannot keep giving pieces of myself away until there is nothing left. I cannot keep making myself smaller so everyone else can be comfortable." He nodded. He said, "I know." He said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have defended you. I was scared of conflict. I didn't want to make things worse. But I made them worse by saying nothing." I squeezed his hand. I said, "You are here now. That is what matters." 2 weeks later, Jennifer came to see me, alone. She sat on my couch. She did not look at me at first. She was picking at her fingernails the way Leo does when he is nervous. Then she said, "My parents never spoke Italian." I did not understand. I waited. She said, "My grandparents did. They came from Sicily. But my parents were told to stop. They were told it made people uncomfortable. It wasn't American. So they stopped. And my grandparents stopped too. And I grew up thinking that was normal. That's what you do. You fit in. You speak English. You don't make people uncomfortable." She looked at me. Her eyes were wet. She said, "I didn't realize I was doing the same thing to you. I didn't realize I was taking something away from Leo and Isabella. I thought I was, I don't know, I thought I was being practical, but I was being cruel. And I'm so sorry, Rosa." She cried. Real tears, not manipulation, just sadness, just shame. I let her cry. Then I said, "Jennifer, I do not want you to be ashamed of who you are. I do not want you to carry this guilt forever. But I also will not be ashamed of who I am. I am Mexican. I speak Spanish. That is my language. That is your children's language too. And that is not going to change." She nodded. She wiped her eyes. She said, "I don't want it to change. I want Leo and Isabella to speak Spanish. I want them to know where they come from, your side and Miguel's side. I was so focused on being successful, on being American, that I forgot what I was losing, what I was making them lose." I looked at her for a long moment. I said, "You did not lose it yet, but you almost did. We almost did." She nodded. I said, "If you want me to spend time with my grandchildren, I will. But it will be on my terms. I will speak Spanish to them. I will cook them Mexican food. I will teach them about their history their culture, their family, and you will not make me feel small for doing it." She said, "I won't. I promise." I looked at her. I saw the woman my son loved. I saw the mother of my grandchildren. I saw someone who had made a mistake and was trying to make it right. I said, "Okay." It has been 4 months now. I see Leo and Isabella every weekend. I do not babysit during the week anymore. Jennifer hired a nanny. She pays her $25 an hour. When I visit on Saturdays, Jennifer does not hover. She does not correct me. She does not make rules. Sometimes she sits with us. She asks me to teach her Spanish words, small ones. Abuela, te quiero, gracias. She stumbles over the pronunciation. Leo laughs at her. She laughs too.
She is trying.
Miguel apologized again. He said he should have spoken up the moment Jennifer made that comment at dinner. He said he was afraid of conflict, afraid of choosing sides. I told him, "Mijo, you should never have had to choose. You should have just done the right thing." He said, "I know. I won't make that mistake again." I still work in the hospital kitchen. I still make meal trays. My hands still hurt at the end of the day. But I do not feel heavy anymore. I do not feel invisible. Last Saturday, I was at Jennifer's house. Leo was at school, but Isabella was home. I was teaching her a song. Estrellita, ¿dónde estás? Me pregunto, ¿quién serás? Jennifer came into the room. She sat down next to us on the floor. She did not say anything. She just listened. When the song was over, Isabella clapped. She said, "Again, Abuela, again!" And Jennifer looked at me. She smiled, a real smile this time, not the smile from that dinner. And she said, "Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for not giving up on us." I looked at my granddaughter. I looked at my daughter-in-law. I thought about all the songs my mother taught me, all the words, all the love passed down through generations. I said, I am their grandmother. I will never give up. I do not know if I made all the right choices. I do not know if I should have spoken up sooner. I do not know if I could have done it differently, more gently, more perfectly. But I know this, I am not afraid anymore. I am not shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. I am speaking my language. I am teaching my grandchildren who they are. I am standing in my own kitchen, in my own skin, with my head up. My husband Javier used to say, "Rosa, you give too much." Maybe he was right. But I also learned something he did not live long enough to see. I learned how to stop. I learned how to say, this is enough. I learned that love without respect is not love. It is just labor dressed up in pretty words. And I learned that my voice, my real voice in my real language, is not something to hide. It is something to sing. If this story touched your heart, leave me a comment. Tell me, have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever made yourself smaller so someone else could be comfortable? I want to hear your story. I am listening. And if you want to hear more, subscribe. I am not going anywhere. I have more to tell. Siempre estoy aquí.